All right, and I am back. This is the top four match against Cat. I skipped past the setup and the mulligan for a couple of reasons. Number one, this one took a little bit more time for reasons I'm sure anybody taking the time to watch this video is well aware of. And I can't really see cards mulliganed for or mulliganed away or anything. Uh, Standard rules, like I want the force jumps, I want the suppress fires, I want the free removal. He does not start with Vader Saber in hand, or I imagine he would have Theed Power Action or played Truce. So I'm just looking at that resource side, and I don't want to have anything to do with that. That two resource sides represents round one fist because of the Theed Power Action. So I'm going to play Hidden Motive on that and just get it off of resource. So if he wants to get it back on resource, he has to pay cards out of his own hand to do it. And that gives me time to roll Leia out to try to discard from a smaller pile of cards. But he ends up paying 2 resources for 4 damage. So that's 2 for 1, and that's commonly considered like the exchange rate. 1 resource equals 2 damage. But not here, because that gives me a lot of information about his hand, and he only has 1 die remaining that represents any reasonable threat to anything, and so I know everything I need to know for the rest of the turn off of that one play. I can set myself up for a very strong round 2. I let him resolve the 2 into the Leia before playing the Force Illusion down on her, because I want to get him to swap back over to Yoda after I put these 2 upgrades down, and kind of worry him a little bit, get him to sweat just a tiny bit. Maybe he rethinks his decision. It's still the right play to go after Leia, even after all of this, with that much damage applied. But if I can get him to swap, then I'm going to try. I can't spend the card in hand. I think it was a mind trick. Yep. And then that Yoda rollout gives me absolutely everything I need this round. I will probably not get the maximum number of cards out of his hand, but I will get enough where this his expenditure of resources and not setting himself up for a first action fist on this next round, and me not having to worry about that really makes this a lot easier for me. And I guess this is a new video, so I have to say it again. When I'm pointing out my opponent's mistakes, I am not doing it to rag on them or to slam dunk or anything. I'm going to point out mine as I see them just as much. I'm just trying to point out all the little things that go into these games. Because making mistakes as a mill player can leave yourself open to much more punishment than in other decks, because with mill, you generally cannot roll yourself out of a hole. You have to hope that your opponent rolls himself to defeat at that point. I want everything in his hand. He didn't spend any of the cards except the Force Strike. I knew it wasn't Fist. I know he can't play in Action 1 Fist. I want him to draw up as much as he can while getting rid of what he apparently mulliganed for but did not play. And this gives me time to get Leia out there and rip from his hand again if I see him making moves to stockpile resources. Vader Saber is not great. But it happens. It's Vader. You're going to have to plan for it. That's why we have Force Jump, right? That's why we have single die removal. I don't mind paying to remove a Vader Saber die. Fine. It's perfectly acceptable. I don't get any sort of help out of Yoda right there. And he rolls quite a bit of damage in response. But we have layers of defense for a reason. He doesn't have any money, but I'm concerned about the truce. So if he's going to truce, I want him to just slam it all into either a Force Illusion or swap targets over to Yoda. If he feed power actions, then I can just resolve Yoda Disrupt. It's just keeping my options open. And him getting rid of a card there, I think, was a mistake. I think he should have probably either re-rolled the power action to get a Yoda die off the table and then re-roll, all this. But by rolling Vader back in, he lets me tee up any number of corrective actions. It was probably a mistake for me to get rid of the Disrupt. I think I should have kept that Disrupt off the Yoda die and just re-rolled the rest. Because now I'm stuck. But he's only going to get maximum 8 damage. He can't re-roll back in another Vader die. So it's a mistake on my part to get rid of the Disrupt. But it's not directly crippling. So I blank out Vader's Saber there, thinking, okay, worst case, one of two things happens. Either A, he has the other truce and he plays Fear and Dead Men, but why wouldn't he do that earlier? Or he has truce and I just end up taking 8 in 2 chunks of 4, in which case the damage to my deck is not quite as bad. He stays on Leia, that is definitely the correct decision, and my force jump rolls back into a special, which means for all intents and purposes, he's done dealing damage for the round. Thinking about how to get the maximum number of cards from him this round and whether or not his hand actually matters. This is certainly a mistake. He will make 0 forward progress. The most he could hope for in damage there is 1 damage off of the Maul or off of the Vader Saber. Um, he should have held on to the card. It was a fruitless reroll, and yeah, he's going to get money out of it, and that tees him up for some other things, but doesn't actually accomplish anything. Resolving Bazine into Yoda is perfectly reasonable there. There's no reason to not take her 3 damage when you can. 1 extra damage on Leia is not too impactful at this point. But really, it's just that reroll is a mistake, and the most you can hope for is 1 damage or these 2 resources. You can get 1 damage if he rolls damage on both Vader and Vader Saber. Resolvable. But meh. So he pitched that last card out of his hand, which let me get maximum value out of Leia's 2 discard side. So I can just go ham on the deck. There was 1 Vader's Fist gone. So now I know I am good to go for Flames of the Past. Or if I end up in some dire straits, it lets me play as though I don't have to keep Flames of the Past as well, knowing that 1 is gone already. If I can be aggressive and take the other one, then I can play a little bit looser by discarding Flames to reroll. Getting 2 more money here, so I think, okay, well, he drew the other Vader's Fist, right? Like, that's the only reason he would do that. So let's just tee up this round. I'll play real slow. I'll get more defensive options down to make sure he can't do any damage. I've got force speed with Yoda special, or not force speed, but I've got force jump with Yoda special backup. I'm not going to give him any free damage at all. There's Flames of the Past. And that's pretty crippling. Here, it doesn't really matter what he rolls. Maximum he would get would be 4 damage. So if he like hits the nut roll off of everything, then I suppress a fire 1, flank the other, and maybe he drew legacies if he had it in his deck. Like that's it. It would let him roll his other Vader die back in the pool, but chances are I have answers for that. Luckily, I don't really need any of it. I opt to keep the suppressifier because the suppressifier on deck is a pretty powerful thing to play against. I know I want maximum damage dealt to his deck this round, so I'm unlikely to claim. I'm going to run out of things to do, so he's very likely to claim. No need to expend a suppressifier right here when I can save it for the next round. Be a little slower, get a little more value out of things. He's being really, really loose with his cards. I think this is a product of not having entirely too much practice against Mill and understanding just how quickly those cards can go away. But things worked out well enough so that I could bait him into resolving his resources, because with Vader Saber out on the field and both Vader's fists in the discard, the resources don't actually matter. He didn't need them, but I was able to get a little more value by taking an action with a ton of dice left over. And when you see someone take an action, they have a ton of dice left over, you know, he's going to take another action. He's not going to claim right there. I can resolve my dice. And who turns down free money? But then I'm able to get him to do that and then swap over the force speed to take a grip of actions. Puts me super far ahead. Now I have Suppressifier, Battlefield Control, and 2 force jumps. Smalls can be somewhat a problem, but not as much as Vader's on its own. And Yoda can, throw some shields around when he needs to. I reroll here to try to get the other, try to get more specials out for Force Illusion because he hasn't actually done anything about it yet. Ends up being a little bit fruitless because he mind tricks me. But at least I didn't roll out Leia there and lose some of her dice in the mind trick as well. I think I had Commando Raid in hand, or I was, at the very least, I was representing it with that. I think I had the Commando Raid and Hit and Run in hand. So I split him up that way to make him choose between losing all the cards in his hand and getting no rerolls off of what he wants to make a giant turn. And he would have to do it into a suppressifier. And at least 1 force jump resolution. Or he can keep his cards, re-roll, and just deal with the force jump. That's what he opted to do. I said that wrong. I mixed that up. I'm mixing my explanations here, but it's okay. I get everything focused over the way I want it, and there's no way you can deal any damage in a round with those dice showing. He has no force speed. I'm pretty sure he doesn't have legacies in the deck. I'm just going to get rid of Evader die to make a reroll totally unprofitable no matter what result it has. And I get a little bit greedy here, but what this does is it makes it so that you can't get more than one reroll. I think that's 2 left in hand. Yeah. And that was just, in my opinion, a very, very terrible play. Yeah, I'm not sure why he priced a failure there, but he ended up conceding immediately thereafter, not wanting to waste any time. And I'm going to go ahead and fast forward through this a little bit. This takes a fair amount of time. If memory serves me right, this ends up being a closer game. Sorry for mixing up my statements about what happens with no matter which mind trick pile he chooses there. That was terribly worded. I don't have the time to go back and redo it, so try to be a little more careful with my words. Heirloom I cannot recommend in a Vader deck. To me, it kind of signals that you are intending on Vader to die and you to still have a chance in the game, which is pretty rare. And if you do want to go that direction, then you probably want Greedo anyway, because he has a damage die, and you probably want Dark Saber. I'm also not sure why he would pitch Dark Saber to reroll here, because that thing can brutalize people on pretty much any of its die sides. Like, even discard resolved against Mill is pretty awful. I had to contend with that in round 2. I remove his resource die before off the overconfidence. I remove his resource die here. I don't want him building up any sort of stockpile. I don't want him ever getting satisfied with a roll. I want to keep him pitching cards, keep him hopeful. I think there was something I could have done about that resource side to remove it. And I did briefly consider bait and switch, but I would, at this point, I'd much rather have him spend the bait and switch so I know it's gone. One, he doesn't have another bait and switch past the second. Two, he doesn't take those resources, which I think was probably the smarter move there. Three, I know I can focus entirely on his deck. And for the round, I get an entire hand of cards gone for the cost of 3 damage. Focus layover, get 2 off the top, and I come up with some money on the end of it there. Extremely good round for me. My tempo's not as good this round, and him taking a resource there, I think, even given what he's about to play, is still a mistake. You need your dice in the pool threatening something with force jump there. Especially when I have that much money at my disposal. If you let me get force jump into the pool, unless I am incredibly unlucky, you're not getting any damage done. That much money, unless my card draw is terrible and my force and my Yoda roll is terrible, you're not getting any damage. So you're building up a board state, but you're giving me another round to just basically go ham. I was being a little greedy there. I was getting a little bit aggressive. I say, I've got mitigation in hand. I can handle some dice. Let me just get. Uh, I'm satisfied with one or maybe two force jump resolutions. I want his entire hand gone. He has no money. I'm going to take one damage. Nothing bad is happening to me here. He gets his resource, so and that was a mistake from me. No reason at all to blank Vader's saber. I should have blanked Vader's one of Vader's base sides, avoid this 4 damage because then I'd be able to Yoda special into the other force jump and blank the other Vader die. Huge mistake by me. Really bad. I was just so focused on burning out his deck, I completely missed that line of play, and I am super far ahead. I'm ahead on resources. I'm ahead of cards. I'm a game up. But it's those situations where you take that damage that you didn't need to take that can really come back and bite you. And it ends up coming back to bite me later on. It's so bad. It's so obvious just looking at it after the fact. Like, okay, blank a Vader. You take some money. Blank the other Vader. I take 1 damage. Instead, I take 3 or 4. And 3 damage is far more uh, than what you ever want to take. Period. My options are limited, so I just say I don't want him to. At least I don't want him to reroll a Vader die back in. Let me save 2 damage, cap him to 5 on those dice, have him resolve that. Leia is now on death's door, and I have to get Yoda in the pool. I think I have another single die removal, so I can take the action there to play Force Med. I'm fully preparing on losing Leia at this point, so I want to maximize hitting his deck this round to just decrease the overall number of rounds that there is. Feel pretty good about being able to keep Leia alive. So I see fist money on the table, and I'm looking for the fists in the discard. I don't see them. So I am very concerned. So if he does take the money here, I can resolve the Yoda discard to try to pull fist out of his hand. I'm gonna pause it and describe a couple better lines of play I could have done. All right. The, the thing to balance out against the possibility of him just taking money and playing fist is him discarding to re-roll. I don't have anything else I can do about it at that point, and then Leia just dies. So if he has fist, Leia's probably dead this round, no matter what I do. If he does not have fist and he re-rolls, then playing field medic saves Leia's life. A better, less committed thing I could have done was re-roll all of Yoda's dice. A force jump helps against option 2, and shields help against fist. Specials on Yoda can get shields, as well as eat deck and set up Leia to eat the rest of his hand if he doesn't have fist. I think me playing field medic there was a mistake, and I think it gives up too much information about what I can and can't do for the rest of that round. So if you see someone like play field medic right there, you know that I don't have any other options available to me to actually affect dice. Did he pass after that? Yeah, okay, no, it was. I don't know, feed power actions. I thought it was pretty odd, but the rest of my round is kind of in stone anyway at this point. It didn't really affect any of my decision making. It was just odd to me. I still think it's odd. I think it was him just kicking the can down the road to see if I was going to try to discard him before playing fist, but he ends up playing dagger. She could have done just by resolving all of his money dice anyway, and then still being able to threaten an action one fist the next round since he didn't have it in hand. Which he still can. But if he just resolves his money first, then I have to resolve Yoda's dice suboptimally. So he could have gotten a little bit more value out of me by doing what he wanted to do in a different order. Ditching Commando Raid, I think, was smart here. I'm trying to draw Flames of the Past. I'm trying to burn up all of his fucking deck. It just hurts to do it with the Commando Raid, but with Leia half dead and me not making too much forward progress so far, I think that was the right call. I'm hoping he doesn't have the other truce in hand. I have to take an action here. And I just take the card out of his hand. That's the most obvious thing in the world to do. I get the Vader's Fist. I don't understand. I don't understand why he didn't just take the money earlier and play Vader's Fist when he knew that I couldn't really do anything about it because I played Field Medic instead of absolutely anything else. He didn't have a Vader's Fist in the discard pile. He wasn't worried about Flames of the Past right there. And he gets a dagger. And he doesn't get to resolve the Darth Vader die anyway. Very unusual set of actions. He's down to last cards in hand. Does get ahead of me on tempo. I don't want him resolving Vader Saber. So Mind Trick here. And this is the other big misplay. If I had to point at two in this, this is the second. So let's back up just a little bit. Not that far. All right. So let's get him separated. All right. So he separates them into those piles. Number one, you never put both Vader dice together into a mind trick unless you are forcing your opponent to remove both of those dice. Right? Taking the 3 damage off the table right here is the better move just by looking at it. Because it's 3 damage to 3 damage, and I don't want you to power action to roll your Vader dice back in. So get rid of 3 dice, 3 damage. I'll deal with what's left out on the board. All right, number 2. Those 3 upgrade dice represent way more than 3 damage. Right? They represent 7, 8 if he pays, and then another plus 3. They represent 11 damage potentially. Whereas Vader's dice, on their best roll, only represent 8 damage. Or, if you want to be very pedantic and very technical, you could Fear and Deadman 1 and then 3 on the other. So, it's still 11. But it's harder to do. I mean, they're not harder to do. It's more... What am I looking for? I have more ways to interact with that line of play, whether it's resolving discard sides, whether it's resolving disrupt. People are going to more generally want to get rid of the dice piles that are bigger with Mind Trick anyway. They're not going to want to get rid of any of Vader's dice with a Mind Trick. And when I evaluate which piles to take away with a Mind Trick, I'm looking at maximum damage and worst case scenarios. And under any of those conditions, the right pile to take away is the upgrades. This also plays around another card that you're going to see him play, I believe, in this round, is the Price of Failure, where if he wants to get good value out of the Price of Failure, he either has to re-roll that other Vader die and then resolve, keep that Vader die out in the pool as a base melee to try to match up with the rest of those upgrades again, or take his chances and basically he's removing one of his own Vader dice in the process. So very, very easy choice to make. Get rid of the upgrades. Like, not even close. And he snap resolves 3, which makes sense. That's probably what I would do. I'm looking for Price of Failure. I was also looking for the Force Strikes there, which is the audio that I was saying. I was telling him looking for the Force Strikes. So I don't need to remove the blank. Not a big deal. I have actions in which to respond to things. Leia's still at risk. And she rolls a discard here, which puts his game plan at risk. So he just snap fires off the Price of Failure, and that was a good play. He has 4 in hand, so I go for the reroll. I want to rip a lot of them out. I want to rip as many of them as I can out. And I need a Leia 2 side in which to do it with. I think it probably would have been smarter to re-roll the other Leia die or the other Yoda die, because in this situation, with only those cards left in hand, he can't afford to discard to re-roll with them. So I'm gonna need to force cards out of his hand, which means I need to force a win this round, which means that keeping a backup Yoda special for that force jump was pretty unnecessary. If he's not going to discard to reroll, then I'm only going to have one shot to blank a die anyway. And I go in the tank here for a little bit. I cannot remember what I had in hand. Um, let me play this out. I can't remember what I have in hand, but assuming I can't change more than one die at all, and the only thing I can actually change, and this is the optimal thing to change, and that's 5 damage that are going to be coming over to Leia. I can Yoda special, and force all 5 of it into her. I can simply resolve this one discard and keep my options open to limit the damage and destruction, basically, to Leia. And that's a terrible idea. Or I can just resolve the force jump and then re-roll into discard sides. Or, and you can see this is what I'm going to end up doing, is foregoing trying to withstand any damage whatsoever. Let's say he's down to his last 4 cards. I want 2 of them gone right now. And so I'm going to be using Leia's 2 focus to change Yoda's dice over to discard sides. I know he's probably not going to re-roll because I have force jump that's still going to sit there on special. And if I remember correctly, I have 2 hidden motives in hand at this point as well. So what took me, 10 seconds to articulate here is taking a longer time to figure out for myself. This roll was like a really grab bag for him. It was really, really good, but also really, really poor. Because, Vader blank, Vader Saber blank, not what you're looking to see. That's me being extremely aggressive. I'm only actually representing 2 discard here. And Yoda gets chunked. But I'm going to be trying to draw my Senate chamber as hard as I can. I'm looking for EMP grenades as hard as I can at this point. And I really, really want tempo into the next round. But I can't afford to let him re-roll those dice. So I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place. He is giving me actions in which to do things, so I just shield up. I want to see if he actually wants to try to do things. I think correct action for him would have been to pass there and force me to make the decision, and then re-roll and start resolving, because he's going for the win here. And if you're going to do that, then you should really just commit to the bit. And then he does something else really weird here, which is he discards. He's about to discard his last card to re-roll these 2 dice, where he could have just resolved the Vader Saber by itself, which allows him to roll out his other Vader die for $1 and deal a damage, which reduces the amount of damage he actually needs to roll and opens up more die sides from which to get a win. Now, none of that was going to happen because I do remember I had 2 hidden motives in hand. But if he goes to the next round there as the optimal play, if he passes to me and makes me choose, then there's very, very real possibility he wins in that next round, and then we have to go to game 3. So that isn't what happened. It went my way, and check out the next video for the finals.